Last week, Donald Trump attacked voting in an executive order, and this week, already 3 lawsuits have been filed fighting back. Welcome to Democracy Docket. I'm Marc Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started.
You know, Paige, Donald Trump issues a lot of executive orders, and they range from sort of nonsensical press releases to the small stuff. But in a category unto itself is an executive order he recently issued in which he engages in what can only be described as an unconstitutional, illegal power grab of authority to control elections in the United States. And we have already seen serious pushback in the form of not one, not 2, but 3 separate lawsuits.
These lawsuits came from the Democratic Party and advocacy groups. But Marc, before we get into the lawsuits, I want to talk about the provisions of this executive order, because Trump is claiming to radically transform American elections in some very specific ways. So I think one of the biggest provisions of the order is that it directs the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission, the EAC, to add a documented proof of citizenship requirement to the federal voter registration form.
Yeah, this has been on the wish list of Republicans now for the last few years. They've tried to impose this by passing state laws at the state level, and those have more often than not been struck down in court. My law firm actually was involved in striking down one recently, won a case in the Ninth Circuit involving that. The SAVE Act, the big omnibus voter suppression law that the Republican Party is introducing in Congress, also this is part of that. But here is Donald Trump trying to take sort of power into his own hands, power that he does not have, by essentially ordering the federal agency that creates the forms and does a bunch of other stuff to add this when he, as the president, has no authority to do this. I mean, like, one of the things, Paige, that people need to understand is that the U.S. Constitution is actually quite clear about how federal elections are governed in this country. It says that the time, place, and manner of those elections are to be determined in the first instance by the states. And if Congress wants to override the states, they can do so by passing legislation. Now, Congress has, in many instances, passed legislation, right? We have an election day because of legislation. We have a law that allows military and overseas voters to vote by mail because Congress has sought fit to do so. There have been various grant programs that Congress has given to the states for them to buy voting equipment and the like. And of course, there is the Election Assistance Commission itself, which is Congress taking authority over elections. Note, though, Paige, none of those involve the President of the United States being able to exercise unilateral authority, and certainly not unilateral authority pursuant to an executive order. So this is illegal. It's unconstitutional. I mean, you can list a million ways, but yes, Paige, this is I won't say at the heart. It is high on their list of propaganda that they want to enact because they know who it will disenfranchise.
Right. We know that requiring proof of citizenship to vote disenfranchises low-income communities, low-income voters who may not have the time and money to spend to get a passport or get a copy of their birth certificate. Voters of color are less likely to already possess documentary proof of citizenship when compared to their white counterparts. We have also seen, literally just a few weeks ago in New Hampshire, that when you require documentary proof of citizenship to vote, you disenfranchise married and divorced women who may have changed their name over the course of their lives. So the current name on their license may not necessarily match the name on their birth certificate. So all around, it just disenfranchises voters. And like you said, it does nothing to help secure elections because non-citizens don't vote illegally in mass numbers, no matter how many times the Republicans say it.
Right. I mean, the most remarkable thing is that the only people that are not affected by the proof of citizenship laws are non-citizens, right? Because non-citizens already can't vote. It is already a crime for them to vote in federal elections. There are already other safeguards to make sure that non-citizens are not voting in U.S. elections. So literally adding this thing, which has this very attractive sound to it, is only disenfranchising lawful U.S. voters. As you point out, young voters, more lower income voters, and married women. So that is the heart of this. But Paige, the executive order actually gets worse from there.
Right. It also directs the Department of Homeland Security and DOJ to review states' voter rolls for list maintenance, adherence, and following federal laws. We've seen how DOJ has ripped apart basically every other part of the government. Why would you let DOJ anywhere near the US election system?
It's wild. I mean, I gotta say, I didn't have Doge being involved in the subpoenaing of state election records on my bingo card. Like, even in the wacky, crazy world of Doge, even in the insane dictatorial mindset of Donald Trump, I did not see the Venn diagram reaching together and somehow Doge playing a role in this effort. I mean, what on earth does Doge, the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, how does that interact at all with states' obligations to keep lists of voters and keep those lists clean and keep those lists up to date and make sure that people are not being disenfranchised? I mean, maybe if you squint real hard, you can sort of see DHS, maybe like off in the distance. But Doge, I mean, it's almost like they were just like putting words on a page, and someone came up and said, "Hey, boss, yeah, Mr. President, throw in the Doge thing."
And Mark, we've already seen so many lawsuits claiming that DOJ is illegally accessing Americans' sensitive information and data at the Department of Treasury, at the IRS, at the Social Security Administration. Election rolls also contain a lot of personal identifying information about voters across the country. And we have seen nobody actually knows who's in charge of Doge, who's running it, who has access to what. But sure, yeah, let's give Doge access to all of our voter rolls because they are so great at handling data already. They're
Right,
so great at record keeping.
But here's the thing, Paige, these voter rolls don't even belong to the federal government. Like this is like we're now like, I mean, it was crazy when Doge essentially like invaded or took over or whatever the Institute of Peace. I mean, that's like a whole other scandal. But now like Doge is going to show up in, I don't know, Pierre, South Dakota and be like, "Hey, South Dakota, like give us what you got." I mean, this is just insanity. And it is a further sign that Donald Trump does not understand what he is doing, what he does not care what he is breaking. All he knows is that free and fair elections are the greatest threat to his political future as president over the next 3 years. He does not want a Democratic House. He does not want a Democratic Senate in 2026. And so this executive order, this power grab, this sort of grab bag of terribleness is his effort to try to seize control of something that he does not have authority to seize control of. But Paige, there were other provisions.
Right. The order also directs the Attorney General Pam Bondi to assist states with the review and prosecution of non-citizens voting. Again, non-citizens aren't voting. It tries to assert more control over the independent EAC. And Mark, it also claims that it will punish states who count mail-in ballots that are received after Election Day. Now, we saw a lot of litigation around this before the 2024 election of Republicans trying to throw out ballots that come in after Election Day. Now, in a lot of states, if mail-in ballots are postmarked by Election Day and received within a certain time frame by election officials after Election Day, so let's say you send your mail-in ballot off on Monday, it's postmarked, but it doesn't get to the election official until Wednesday or Thursday after Election Day. In a lot of states, that ballot would still be counted because they can see that you sent it off before Election Day. Now, Trump and the Republican Party want to punish states who adhere to that practice and are threatening to withhold funds from them.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, just sheer insanity. First of all, it is terrible public policy. There's no argument in favor of what Donald Trump is trying to do. But in any event, he doesn't have the legal ability to compel states to decide how they are going to count ballots. Like literally, it is in the Constitution. It is in the Constitution that it is up to the states to set the time, place, and manner of elections, subject only to congressional override. Republicans have been shopping this idea that somehow Congress has spoken to this by setting a uniform election date. That has been rejected throughout the country by courts, with the exception of one. The very conservative Fifth Circuit adopted that view, but that is the minority view of courts that have addressed this. And it is certainly not up to Donald Trump to, shall we say, break the tie, right? If Republicans want to advance that argument, they know how to get to the U.S. Supreme Court. They can do that. But the fact is, this is not something he can do by executive order. It is not something that is the role of the president. But Paige, I just can't go without offering like the chutzpah award here. Republicans spent the last several decades lecturing Democrats about the importance of federalism and about the importance of letting states set their own laws and state sovereignty. You are from one of these states, I won't say its name, that actually thinks, maybe it's even on the road to being its own independent nation.
We were our own country at one point. It could come back. You don't know.
Right. So, I'm just curious, is Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton, are they on board with the federal government dictating to Texas, how they run their elections? Or is this just situational, where when it involves something they like, now all of a sudden federalism is not such a big deal? All of a sudden those the hats get smaller, the cattle disappear.
It's definitely situational, because we saw for years how Republicans were claiming up and down that the independent state legislature theory was true, that state legislatures have the ultimate authority to set election rules. Congress maybe could be involved sometimes. But now we turn around. Now we have the president issuing an executive order that is claiming to transform American elections. It is in direct conflict with some laws passed by Congress. And you see Republican congressional representatives saying nothing about how the president is encroaching on their power. Instead, they're praising him. You're seeing Republican state officials also praising this executive order. None of them are making that ISL claim. But Marc, remember back to Biden's 2021 executive order that just said, federal agencies should try to do voter registration when they can. And Republicans were like, this violates our freedom and liberty in every way you can imagine, and filed multiple lawsuits challenging it.
Right. Now, before we end, we started with the lawsuits. We're going to end with the lawsuits. As I mentioned at the beginning, there have been 3 lawsuits filed so far challenging this. The first is a lawsuit that my firm and I are involved in on behalf of the National Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee, Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the Democratic Governors Association, as well as Democratic leaders Schumer and Jeffries. That is one lawsuit that challenges multiple provisions of this law, and we are thrilled that the Democratic Party is coming together and fighting this. The second lawsuit, filed by LULAC, a great organization, largest Latino organization in the country, and their lawyers at the Campaign Legal Center and State Democracy Defenders brought a second lawsuit. And the third lawsuit, filed by the ACLU and the Brennan Center on behalf of the League of Women Voters and a group of other civil rights organizations. So there's a lot of firepower being brought to challenge this. Different pieces of it, slightly different legal theories, but more similar than different. And I suspect, Paige, we have not seen the last of the lawsuits. Not that I know anything, but just, I suspect that we will see other lawsuits filed, which in my view goes to show how important this issue is. Right. I wrote a piece for Democracy Docket. I hope everyone has a chance to read it. It was actually a piece only for paying members, but we thought it was so important that we actually made it free to everybody. And it's actually now up on the Democracy Docket website, where I talk about why this is the most important executive order we have seen. And these litigation cases are so important because Donald Trump is afraid of free and fair elections. Donald Trump is afraid of what happens if millions of Americans go to the polls. And so I suspect that this is not the last authoritarian effort he's going to have towards elections. He's probably going to try future executive orders. He'll definitely try other things. But Paige, this is why we built Democracy Docket.
Right. Democracy Docket is here to track these lawsuits, to report on them, but more importantly, to help all of you understand what's going on in court, to fight for our democracy, to protect your right to vote, but also understand who is trying to take your right to vote away. And in this case, it is the President of the United States.
Yeah. So if you are not already subscribed to Democracy Docket, please take a chance and do so. If you want the free subscription, you can click on the link above and or in the show notes below and become part of the Democracy Docket community on that basis. If you want access to all the premium content as well, there is also a link below to do that. It is $10 a month, and I think you'll find money well spent. But either way, it is important that you stay up to date on everything happening with democracy and voting in courts. And there is no better way to do that than by subscribing to Democracy Docket. We will see you next time.